And I've been, really, really under it. I don't talk to him like I talk to you, so I haven't told him like how stressed I've been with not having a baby nurse. Still don't have one, by the way. Found someone, and she was only available for like 5 days. But anyway, still don't have a baby nurse. Just the idea of going back to work right away, and also the idea of like, prepping for our movie and like wanting to work out every day and all that, but yet being on set all day every day. I'm like, what have I done? Like, the only reason that I'm doing proxy before is because I gave them my word and I wouldn't go back on that, and felt like I had to make it work. But like, having a week off in between, it's just a lot. It's a lot. And the closer the reality gets, the more I'm just like,
Blake Lively was clearly searching for an off-ramp. She needed a way out of a contract she no longer wanted. It appears Blake was deeply unhappy with the reality of signing on for multiple films during the same period she was pregnant with her 4th child. For reasons that still raise eyebrows, Blake agreed to star in a movie scheduled to begin filming in May 2023, after giving birth to her son in late December 2022. That left her only a few short months postpartum to recover, transform her body, and prepare for a role that required intense physicality and numerous intimate scenes. What became obvious through her own voice memo is that Blake was exhausted, stretched thin, and overwhelmed. She sounded like a mother who didn't truly want the job anymore, but felt trapped by what she believed was a major career opportunity. She viewed it as a chance for herself and her husband to release competing projects simultaneously. Blake desperately wanted to be part of the Barbie movie, but that didn't happen. Instead, she committed to this film, and when reality set in, panic followed. She didn't achieve the physical transformation she had hoped for. Many listeners, after hearing her audio, commented that they could relate, that she felt insecure about her postpartum body. That insecurity may explain the excessive baggy, unflattering wardrobe meant to conceal her figure. And honestly, that theory makes sense. From the start, I've said postpartum struggles played a major role here. While that doesn't excuse her behavior, it absolutely cannot be ignored. There's also a harsh truth about Hollywood for women in their late 30s. Time feels like an enemy. Roles dry up. The vixen parts disappear. Women who were once cast as a draw suddenly get pushed into maternal roles. And in Hollywood, sex sells. Blake felt herself aging out, and she panicked. She wanted out. And when she realized she couldn't escape the contract, she decided instead to take control. She admitted as much herself. In her deposition, she said the film she agreed to was changing significantly, and she knew she couldn't walk away. Her name was already attached. Press releases were out. Crew had been hired around her. There was no exit, so she took over. If she couldn't leave, she would dominate the project. If she didn't get what she wanted, behavior, credit placement, creative control, she still couldn't leave. Something critical happened during contract negotiations. While editing continued, she still hadn't signed her actor loan-out agreement. Across 4 contract drafts, red line by Lively's team, blue line by Wayfarer, 2 major disputes stood out. One involved sexual harassment language. The other centered on credit placement and the morality clause. Blake pushed to remove language tying her credits to compliance with that clause. The studio refused. The clause clearly stated that credit would only be granted if the artist appeared recognizably in the released film and was not terminated for default, including violations of the morality clause. Credits, advertising placement, video billing, and title treatment were all explicitly conditional, and that's where everything unraveled. The credit tie-ins covered everything: how her likeness would be used, her executive producer credit, billing, advertising placement, every single piece of it. And all of it was explicitly contingent on one thing: compliance with the morality clause. The studio was firm. They told her, "We're fine with the standard termination for breach language, but the extra carve-outs you're asking for are unnecessary." They weren't backing down. Blake didn't want her credits tied to morality clause at all. The studio insisted they had to be. Importantly, there was no disagreement about what the morality clause actually said. Everyone agreed on the language. The clause stated that the artist warranted she had not, prior to the agreement, been convicted of any acts involving moral turpitude that would violate community standards or, if publicly revealed, bring widespread public disrepute, scandal, or ridicule upon the artist, the company, its assignees, distributors, or advertisers. The clause further made clear the company was relying on that warranty when entering the agreement. If the artists were convicted of such acts, or if the company later learned she had been, the company could terminate the agreement immediately with written notice. And once terminated, The company would owe nothing further. No payment, no credit, no indemnity, no insurance obligations. Gone. Finished. Moral turpitude is a broad standard. It doesn't require a criminal conviction. On a film set, it can include harassment, bullying, intimidation, threats, or creating a hostile work environment. It can include physical aggression. It can include leaking confidential information, scripts, plot details, internal production matters. If Blake was sharing private materials publicly, that alone could be a breach. It also covers public conduct. Offensive statements, racist, sexist, inflammatory, can trigger the clause if they expose the studio to backlash or scandal. And here's the key point. Undermining or sabotaging production can absolutely activate a morality clause. Blake repeatedly used pressure tactics, threats, ultimatums, constant leverage plays. Morality clauses exist to protect studios from exactly this kind of behavior, threatening to walk off set, refusing contractual obligations, or holding production hostage unless demands are met as considered hostile, unprofessional conduct. Studios worry about reputational harm. Even rumors of a difficult or volatile actor can damage marketing, investor confidence, and public perception. Repeatedly using work obligations as leverage is viewed as coercive and bullying, language explicitly included in many morality clauses. This clause boxed Blake in. She didn't want to agree to it because it directly covered the very behavior she was engaging in. Yes, she ultimately agreed to the clause itself, but the fight was over whether her credits could be pulled if she violated it. Here's why that mattered. If Blake signed while still pushing for producer credit and then continued using threats and pressure, the studio could revoke her credit, terminate her contract, and potentially sue her. She'd be done. The studio had multiple ways to terminate her. Blake had 0 ways to terminate them. That imbalance is why she kept searching for leverage anywhere she'd find it. And then, very late in the game, very late, something changed. For the first time on April 18th, 2024, amid disputes over profit participation, promotion refusals, and cuts of film, Blake's lawyers sent a new draft. And for the very first time, they suddenly began arguing over the definition of sexual harassment. That was no coincidence. Under the terms of the contract, the sexual harassment provision was completely standard. It clearly stated that sexual harassment was strictly prohibited and constituted grounds for immediate termination of the agreement by the company or by the artist. No employee or contractor could be subjected to unwanted sexual conduct during the course of employment. We've already gone over that language in detail. The key part comes at the end. If the company became aware of sexual harassment committed by the artist, the company had the right to immediately terminate the agreement and pursue all available rights and remedies. That's normal. That's boilerplate. What Blake tried to insert, however, was anything but normal. She wanted language stating that if the artist became aware of any sexual harassment conducted by the company, then, notwithstanding the rest of the contract, the artist and lender could immediately terminate the agreement, remain entitled to full compensation, and pursue all rights and remedies under the contract and applicable law. That's where it gets extraordinary. This language is incredibly broad. Becomes aware doesn't require proof. It doesn't require an investigation. It doesn't require reporting through proper channels. Not only that, but it doesn't even require that the harassment actually occurred. Likewise, it simply requires her to claim awareness, hear something, be told something, believe something, and that alone would allow her to walk away, get paid in full, and sue. That is a massive shift in power. There's a huge difference between a company terminating an employee or contractor for misconduct and a contractor being able to terminate the company based on mere awareness of alleged harassment. What Blake was asking for placed her in a position of dominance, effectively saying, "I'm not your employee. I'm your boss. I can fire you, keep the money, and take legal action without proving anything." And that wasn't all. She also wanted to override the contract's arbitration clause and damage limitations by inserting, notwithstanding Section 16.6. She was attempting to wipe out the entire dispute resolution framework of the agreement. Section 16.6 governs how legal proceedings occur and limits remedies to actual damages, subject to further limitations in Section 16.7. Section 16.7 is critical. It excludes special and punitive damages. Both sides waive them. That's standard. Blake wanted that waiver gone, so she could seek special damages, punitive damages, and broader remedies. Here's why that matters. When she says notwithstanding, she's declaring that everything she's adding overrides everything the studio negotiated below. Her sexual harassment clause becomes a controlling authority. Not the arbitration rules, not the damage limits, not the ownership provisions. That gives her leverage. Despite the contract granting the studio full ownership and control of the film, this override would allow Blake to retain influence. This is something high-profile actors push for when they want to protect their image, exert creative control, or prevent the studio from acting unilaterally. She wouldn't own the film. She wouldn't own the profits. Likewise, she couldn't sell it or take it away from the studio, but she could control how her work was used. She could challenge edits to her scenes. She could object to footage she filmed being used in ways she disliked. Not only that, but she could demand changes or removals if she felt her performance or portrayal was compromised. Even if no harassment ever occurred, she could still go to court to assert those rights. That override clause gave her bargaining power. It forced the studio to negotiate with her creatively, legally, and financially, despite the contract otherwise giving the company total ownership and control. And that's exactly why the studio pushed back. Even promotional decisions, if there was a potential claim involved, if she gained a limited veto, not ownership, but influence, it would give her real power. And that's exactly why the judge asked whether the veto had ever been used. Because she was given one. What Blake was doing with this clause was essentially saying, I don't own the film, but I can make it nearly impossible for you to release it. The movie used her image. It contained her performance. And under that framework, she could claim sexual harassment and assert the legal right to sue. Sexual harassment became a tool for control. If the studio had agreed to her language, they would have effectively surrendered their ownership rights, their ability to release the film, approve its distribution, or move forward without her consent. She could have blocked the release, stopped distribution, sued them, and still gotten paid. And if she wanted out, the easiest way would be to manufacture a sexual harassment claim. That's the leverage. She didn't get that language into the actor loan-out agreement because it was never signed. Instead, she pivoted to the so-called 17-point agreement, the document she now relies on, because the ALA was never executed. That's why she's leaning so hard into retaliation claims. Retaliation was defined and agreed upon in the 17-point addendum. Sexual harassment was not. There was never a contractual agreement on what sexual harassment meant or how it triggered termination. But here's the fatal flaw. There was no signed inducement. She never fully executed the loan-out agreement. In the final draft sent at the end of April 2024, Blake tried to force the studio to waive both the inducement and the signature requirement. She wanted language removed stating that the agreement was only binding upon receipt of executed copies signed by the artist and lender. She also wanted the inducement explicitly incorporated and requiring signatures. Struck entirely. The studio refused. Repeatedly. They made it crystal clear. No conditions were waived, nothing was waived, and they would not be bound without signatures. Until Blake signed, Wayfair refused to be bound to the agreement, and the contract explicitly stated that without execution, there was no contract. Signatures were mandatory. The inducement was mandatory. Blake wanted those requirements removed, so her unsigned 17-point agreement could effectively become the governing contract. That document gave her far more leverage, especially on retaliation. It allowed her to claim rights over edits, cuts, intimate scenes, body doubles, intimacy coordinators, and so-called protection she later alleged were missing on set. By refusing to sign, she could keep the studio silent. If she wasn't bound by the agreement, they weren't protected by it. But she could still argue they were bound by her terms. That logic doesn't hold legally, and the judge has already signaled that neither document is enforceable. But contract law is confusing. Most people don't read contracts. They tune out. I get it. But when you listen to her voice memo, where she openly talks about wanting out and feeling trapped, and then read her deposition where she admits she had no way out, this is the way out. If she could accuse the studio of sexual harassment, she could seize control of the film. She could shape it the way she wanted. She could dictate how it looked, who was involved, and how it was released. Furthermore, she could sideline people, erase them creatively, and force outcomes in her favor. That was a strategy. The message was clear. If I don't get what I want, I will block everything you're doing and prevent this film from ever being released. Period. She put them in an impossible position. Every move they made came with a threat attached. She kept pushing them to acknowledge that the retaliation clause was enforceable. So she could say, if you do this, I sue you. If you say that, I sue you. If you even get sarcastic with me, I sue you. If you go public, I sue you. At the same time, she was trying to rewrite the confidentiality and non-disparagement provisions to carve out an exception for herself. Her proposal would allow her to speak publicly about her experience on set, as long as she deemed it truthful. So the studio would be gagged, bound by confidentiality and retaliation language, while she could say whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted. So long as she claimed it was true, the studio refused. And for good reason. Truth is subjective. What one person believes to be true can be disputed, distorted, or outright false. They rejected that language outright during negotiations. And that's why the contract never got signed. She didn't get what she wanted. She wanted control. She wanted to weaponize sexual harassment allegations as leverage. Ultimately, she couldn't lock that power in contractually. The film had to move forward. The film had to be released. She almost got away with it until everything collapsed. Marketing fell apart. Rumors started spreading. And then it all came out. The pressure tactics, the threats, the attempted takeover of the film. Now look at how the retaliation and confidentiality clauses would have worked together. First, accuse the studio publicly of sexual harassment. Second, if the studio tells the truth about what really happened on set, about her exerting control, about taking over, that becomes retaliation. So there's silence from both directions. It's a double bind. Accuse them publicly, then muzzle them legally. Honestly, I don't even know who came up with this strategy. I don't think Blake is savvy enough to engineer something this complex on her own. To me, it feels like something Ryan would come up with, but that's just my opinion. Digging through these contracts is wild. If this bored you, I get it. Contract law is tedious. But once you actually read the documents, a pattern emerges. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't reactive. This was a plan from the beginning. Sexual harassment was always meant to be the mechanism. The stall negotiations and failed agreements prove it. That's why I believe the judge would be wise to throw out both the actor loan-out agreement and the 17-point agreement, rely solely on the offer letter, and dismiss the entire case outright.